Hello and welcome to another Ahead of the Curve show. I am your host, Geoffrey Platt, and I would like to welcome Tim Nash to the show. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Geoffrey. Thank you for having me along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what's the weather like there over in the UK currently?
We've been blessed. I think we had the children are back at school, so I think now, since they've been back, the sun's decided to come out. So I think we're having what we call an Indian summer at the moment. This week's been really nice. So we had August was not great, but ever since the children have gone back to school, the sun's decided to come out a little bit.
So you guys are actually having a little bit of kind of quasi staycation time.
Yeah, I think especially this week, we've sort of. I think everyone put the sweaters back out and brought out the jeans but now the shorts are back on. So it's I think we're just making the most of it before October comes and the dark. It's definitely getting darker anyway. The nights are slowly coming in. So we're beginning to feel it. But we've been so lucky. We've been so lucky. I think this year especially, we've had some great weather.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, here in Florida, it's been very, very windy recently. I don't know. You probably don't see a lot of the traction of what's going on here weather-wise, but there's a whole bunch of like storms and targets in the Atlantic Basin right now that are all kind of on their way coming over here to the coast. So it looks like our stormy seasons are here to stay, and 2020 has just been one crazy roller coaster ride. Yeah. So it looks like my wife has checked our feed, and it looks like we are good to go on both platforms. So for those of you who have not seen the show before, I just want to welcome you to Ahead of the Curve. I do want to mention to you that this is a very engaging show. We keep it very interactive. We keep it very lively. If you have any questions at any point, please post a comment in the feed. We will gladly engage with you and answer those questions. And of course, if you have any comments as we are talking and working our way through the conversation, please feel free to comment on that as well. So just wanted to thank you again. And I have Tim Nash on the show from Weil, BC. So Tim, can you give us a little bit of an idea of your background, kind of where you got started and how you got into retail?
Yeah, I suppose it's quite a long story really in terms of how I've kind of it's a very roundabout way that I've ended up here. It's quite a sort of mixed journey. I've always been into art. I was really into art. I think fashion was always a big thing, and I ended up going to university to do a fashion design degree, which I think it was my dream thing to do. It was what I wanted to do. But I got on the course and I kind of realized that halfway through doing a degree course that I wasn't into fashion design. It wasn't fashion design that really intrigued me. It was about how you bring art to life in a way. And it wasn't through product, it was through something else. And I left university and probably like a lot of 20-year-olds at the time, got a job in a retail shop. Never done retail before. I'd worked in a garden centre up until that point, and just took on. It was kind of a sexy job in London, in Covent Garden, working in a shop. So really got into what then was ultimately visual merchandising through that. So through dealing with the displays in a French Connection shop at the time.
I actually used to have French Connection shirts and clothing in my closet.
Yeah, well, it was. I joined it. I've always been lucky, I think, through my career to join the brands at the right time. So, French Connection was on this huge sort of brand curve of growth from in the FC UK sort of brand time. So, it was all about commodity, brand, product, a really strong sort of visual presence. So my kind of career grew from them, from working in the shop to then doing, they opened a big flagship store in London in Oxford Street, then through to working for their head office, doing the brand campaigns for across the UK as they opened stores, and then moved into working for them across Europe and then globally, opening stores in the Middle East and Japan and places like that. And it was it was a great sort of 7 years of career, really, of learning hands-on about retail and commercial driving of sales through visual of products. And then through that, I obviously developed and grew and moved to Fred Perry, which was a real sort of heritage brand. Again, it was all about brand, how you bring that to life, how you storytell, how you create an engagement with the customer, how you do all of those things to make people actually purchase. Moved from there to Topshop, which again at the time was going on this huge kind of global curve, major fashion brand, kind of taking over, especially in the US. We went into the US and was this big fanfare. So really on a sort of global scale of delivering what I would call retail excitement. My whole kind of career has been around creating a sort of sense of something, fanfare or anything really, for people to really feel passionately about going to purchase that product. And then finished up at Jack Wills, which is another sort of English, very British brand. It was all about lifestyle, about creating a sense of community for customers. And then sort of got into, I suppose I took my career so far that I needed to move into a place where it was more around talking to people directly. So I think I'd kind of taken brands as far. So I was really interested then about talking to lots of brands, about taking my experiences and driving those out. So it's now kind of across a number of agencies for the last number of years, but now at Wild is really taking a lot of the Wild team. So we work across sports, esports, fashion, marketing, events, pop-ups, all those kind of things. And really, I think that's for me where retail is at the moment. It's like a multitude of all those things put together, which is what is really exciting about Wild, is that we're not solely focused on retail.
Yeah,
but we take a lot of our thought processes from those various markets. And I think, we just play really. We take. It's about a customer journey, a customer experience, whether they're at a sports event, a launch of a fashion show, or a product launch, really.
So I find that's pretty interesting, especially during these times, where I think brands have been making some pretty major shifts in the way that they were working conventionally. Let's just say 7 months ago, before the whole pandemic hit. And, there's been a lot of transitions, a lot of experimenting, seeing brands, start to pop even events up virtually online and finding different creative ways to be able to still engage and reach out to their clientele. What are some of the things that you've been noticing, in the course of the last 7 months, and maybe some of the communications you've had with these brands on how they're shifting to kind of more online presences? Kind of what are some of the trends that you've been seeing in that?
Well, it's definitely, I think we've all experienced it, that we've all moved to an e-commerce way of living. So we're all buying online, we're all shopping online. We've moved our groceries to online. I do my online click and collect. But what I think we've all noticed, and brands are talking about especially, is that's amazing, that kind of world that we all live in and communicate and share. But what they still can't do is that personal connection. So brands still want to get that personal connection to a consumer. You can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't talk to someone about it, you can't sit in it, for example, for a car. You can't. It's amazing the things that we can all do online and through our phones and through mobile devices and all those things, but you still can't get that buzz. Shopping is part of our DNA. I think retail is part of our DNA. And it's been interesting because I think we've, in the UK especially, have got this new sort of sense of community through the sort of lockdown period that we've had. So where we haven't sort of gone out on to major shopping, like our sort of cities are kind of very quiet at the moment, but the local high street has kind of had this renaissance really. which has been really interesting. So the local kind of butchers and bakers and all those sort of things are finding a sort of new niche. And I think it's that piece around community. You know, you can talk to someone, and we're all missing that a little bit. And there's a real conversation with brands at the moment is how they tap into that. Because, yeah, I think the days where we all go into a shop, unless it's someone like Primark, you know, doesn't have a retail. They're incredible. They don't have an e-commerce site, so you have to physically go there to engage with them and to shop. But I think anyone else, really, it's about harnessing that community and bringing people to an environment, whether it's a store, whether it's a pop-up, whether it's some activation they do locally, but to engage with the product in a way.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest challenges. It's also been one of the biggest challenges that we've been speaking about a lot recently on the shows, is being able to have that physical connection and that physical engagement, because we all crave it, right? Yeah. And I see a lot of commonalities, common grounds between all of these different things. They all relate right back to the same thing, which is how we engage on a personal level. You know, the emotional side to experiencing something. So when you go to a concert, of course, you've got the energy and the excitement. You're going to see a band that you might not have ever seen, and you've been dying to see them your entire life. But I also think that also, of course, follows through in our shopping experiences, the way that we shop, the way that we even relate to brands. You know, a lot of us carry around Apple products in our pockets. I think they've done a phenomenal job in the way that they push their brand in front of people, the way that they have set up their stores, and the way that you interact and engage with the brand is very, very smart, and you know, still very much viable in the way today, even in their online presence, right?
Yeah, and I think that is an interesting point, because there's a lot of I suppose what retailers struggle with, there's a lot of conversations around, is how you separate what would traditionally be a bricks and mortar store with an e-com platform. So I think a lot of people think about it in separate parts of their business, whereas Apple's an amazing example that you go into an Apple store, you touch it, you feel it. I don't know how many people purchase. I don't know what their sale rate in Apple is, but it's not about selling the product, physically selling. Yeah, Apple, you're buying into the brand. So you touch that new device, you play with the new iMac, you do all that. Whether you purchase it there or 3 weeks or 2 months later, it's all part of that Apple cycle that you're in.
Yeah. And I think we kind of see that as well in a lot of other brands. I think us as humans, we put trust into these companies as well, right? And these brands that we kind of follow throughout our lifetime. I mean, I can tell you, I've got a pair of Olu Kai sandals on my feet, and ever since I bought my first pair, I have not turned back. Yeah. You know, it's gonna take like everything for a brand to be able to deter me from moving away from my comfortable, cozy sandals. Even my wife hates the fact that I basically live in my sandals, right? So I would be like that poster child for Olu Kai and their brand. How have you been seeing changes happen inside of the way that brands engage more recently, especially like throughout the pandemic? Have you seen any creative ways that brands have been kind of working to try and engage more with their customers and their user bases?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of it's that piece where it's the communication piece between the customer. So I you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much happening in China that was so interesting in terms of how they would set up live streaming of products. So they would bring the shopping. So they brought the department store to your home. They had WeChat with the shop assistants, so that they'd have direct communication with their shoppers and their VIPs. I don't think we've embraced it in such a way here in Europe. I think we don't have that relationship with our customers like they do in China with the communication through WeChat. We don't have that, but I think it's that personal. It's trying to bring that personal experience back. So it's really around bringing. I think that those pieces to make you to go out and engage really. So gamification. I think there's lots of around that. There's things around how you customize virtually and digitally. It's really about embracing I suppose what retail is and that how in a new normal really. So it's how we interplay between physical and digital. It's difficult at the moment as well because you can't touch. Everyone's sort of lost that sense of touch. So no one can touch or do anything. So it's how you bring. There's been some really interesting things around. Obviously, Burberry opened their kind of store where everything was, you could scan everything with a QR code. There's been so many things, with barcodes and all those kind of things. So products come to life. You get information. We were looking at loads of things around how you could just interact with a store member without a face-to-face communication. I think we've all probably hate those big perspex screens that we've put them all up all over the place in our stores, so that everything happens behind this, and it's sort of taken away that physical interaction with someone in a store. So I think there's new ways around how we can engage with products and people really. And I suppose that's where the digital piece comes into it. So it kind of that sense of play and exploration and interaction really that we all love about retail, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. I used to work for a company, a creative firm that worked on a lot of content in creating pop-up events and experiential events and that sort of thing, or at least started to get into the realm of doing a lot of that. And I know the whole idea of brand-based experiential marketing has been just a huge thing. At least it was, over the past year, until, of course, the whole pandemic came and changed the way that we do things. But what are some of your thoughts on those experiential experiences for brands? Some of the ways that they've been using technologies, of course, like the event that Nike did in China with the running, with the runners being able to engage with the video aspects and show stats and things on screen as they ran around the track, which was really impressive and quite something to see. I know I had a lot of inquiries after that from other customers going, "Hey, we saw this Nike event. How can we reproduce that? How can we do that in different ways for our customers?" And even in our fields, we've been doing that as well with cars in the auto industry, trying to promote the different brands in the automotive industry by using technology like projection mapping and interactive tracking abilities for different products to kind of show them off and show what they're capable of doing. So what are some of your thoughts based on the experiential events and the way that brands are even still creating pop-ups and engaging with people during these times?
I think, talking back to these sort of incredible things, a lot of it. So we've had a lot of conversations and a lot of our pieces coming from District did the incredible wave on the top of Billboard that was the sort of 3D anthropomorphic digital wave piece. And a lot of it, the conversations are coming around how are we and how are brands looking to create those sort of stop and moments, those kind of real moments that people go out and just cause disruption to their sort of daily lives, I think. So really around things like, the Nike store that the innovation lab that they've opened recently, where everything in there was really geared to that personal experience that would, that you can't get at home, that sort of really engage them on a personal level. So down to the fact that you get personalized offers and they know your full details around your all your sizes because you're a Nike brand fan. It's the same for Adidas. Adidas's store in Oxford Street here in the UK. They've got this sort of ghost interactive area in the store that you can play with the whole digital wall. So you become part of the art and the theatre of the store. So
that's super cool.
There's kind of, it goes from kind of really sort of small interactions around, like I was saying, scanning QR codes right through to kinetic window displays so that when you walk past, it moves with you so that you become part of the kind of the theatre really in that way. And there's lots of things that we're sort of seeing and being shared and being involved in around brands that look to bring products to life through AR or VR. So how can, you might not want to try how physically the product, but how do you bring that to life in your own in your environment? Or how can you walk into a store through augmented reality in your own house, for example? So I was playing around with a pop-up tent the other week that you could put into your living room and walk in and watch a brand's product demonstration. So I think there's so much that is kind of so exciting. Louis Vuitton it goes from kind of very simple, but Louis Vuitton have been bringing digital interactions into their window displays so that where they've got static 2D, 3D elements that traditionally, probably where I've come from in my career, is that window displays and things like that were very static. We were all about theatre. We were all about how you create a theatre and excitement in a space and engage a passing customer. What the kind of integration of digital, even if it's just a digital screen, for example, what that begins to allow us all to do is bring a sense of movement into something that's quite flat. So it's interesting to see how that kind of art piece starts to move, so that it's that digital versus that I think everyone calls it that sort of fizzy digital in a way. So you've got this strange merge between them, and I think what I'm kind of really interested in, a lot of my recent things, is where the people are sort of working on these sort of crazy. I saw Shane F. He did a digital aquarium, which wasn't a physical activation. He'd kind of put it virtually into an Instagram piece, but it was just he'd placed a kind of virtual aquarium into a park in Brooklyn. And it just sparked my imagination that it doesn't have to be virtual anymore. Like, there is a way that we could bring these crazy sort of digital installations to life physically.
It's definitely been an interesting time and an interesting exploratory time without a doubt. Carl Turley is here. Hey, Carl. He's got a question for you, asking, do you agree that short-term leases and pop-up stores will be the way forward for brands, particularly on the line brands creating a destination to touch and feel product?
Yeah.
Great question.
Pop-ups are great. I think pop-ups are especially short-term lease as well at the moment.
I think we answered part of it.
Is part of, I think everyone's strategy for brands. Pop-ups are great because you can just appear. There's a reason to go there. You create a buzz around a product or a launch or a moment. There's no risk with a pop-up. And it doesn't have to be a whole store. So, Montblanc have done one recently. There's been some incredible pop-up, and for me, it's what I'd call a moment. It can be anything. I think. It can be a giant handbag that you've created that you walk inside, for example.
Or a giant hamburger.
That would be even better. Everything for me is always giant. I've sort of have this strange massive. Everything has to be massive whenever I think of anything. But it's that thing where it's that disruption thing again. It's like Nike could put a giant Nike. I saw some amazing. Someone had come up with them on Behance illustrations, but someone had just dropped a massive Nike shoe into a street.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that in a post recently, which was really interesting.
There's no reason why you can't do it, and I think that's what the sort of future of retail is. My favorite pop-up is Adidas did a giant shoebox that you could go in, and it doesn't need to be a shop full of product. It could be selected product. People queue outside Supreme for hours to buy a limited range of product. I think we've got so used to shops being full of so much product that there's no way a shop could fill now as much product as, well, if you look at how much Amazon, for example, is endless in terms of product. So
yeah,
our way of shopping is probably, we've got the brands and retailers need to change their mentality a little bit. I think a pop-up allows you to do that.
I think you bring up a really good point about the pop-ups, but also about the brand scale and scalability within a brand. Just for example, looking at like Sony yesterday, making their announcement on the PlayStation 5, which was a huge ordeal, even in the design changes. I love gaming. I've always been an avid collector of video game systems and things like that. But, seeing the hype that went around the PlayStation 5 and video consoles, especially right now, are huge, hot commodity items. And we're seeing some really interesting approaches there. But, they took some interesting approaches on how they promoted that product, and they streamlined their focus. And I think Sony does, again, a really good job in separating and diversifying the ways that they bring their markets or bring their products to market. Some ways are good and some ways are not so good. I'd say that the final execution in their pre-orders and their pre-sales was not a really good, did not have a whole lot of good positive movement. Because they kind of botched the tail end of it, but leading all the way up to it, they did a phenomenal job in keeping a very narrow focus and keeping the hype and the attention on that product. Tracy actually just mentioned on the show having a surprise and unexpected impact is definitely seems to be trending, and I find that is very, very much the case. We even see that in pop-up art installations that happen all over the world, which actually happened a lot before the retail trends started to take place, where artists would come in and build sculptures in the middle of the town squares. And they'd be there one day and then gone the next, or they'd be there indefinitely.
Yeah, and I think that in sort of retail, that mentality is great. It creates a reason to go somewhere. I think the thing you can't, we can all shop online 24/7. We can all click buy today, deliver tomorrow. For example, we can even buy now and have it delivered in an hour, I think, in some places. But what you can't do, you can pop up here for exclusive, it could be an exclusive customized bike, for example, that's being someone's doing special artwork on it in the store. Or a skateboard or anything. It's a customized product. You can't have that online. And I think, it goes back to that reason to have to go somewhere for a certain, and what it also makes, especially if you're a brand fan, for example, if you're in the know, you're in the know. So not everyone might know this, which is why the unexpected and sort of surprises, that surprise and delight, I call it, I suppose. It's always been around how you create that surprise and delight to your customers and your consumers.
Yeah, No, absolutely. I wanted to ask the viewers, because I think this is super fun. I'd love to hear about your favorite memory or your favorite brand engagement. It could be anything from seeing a Windows display that just blew you away in a retail shop, or going and experiencing a pop-up or something along those lines. It would be great to hear your thoughts on that as well. Carl, again, is mentioning that the retail world has always talked about reinventing itself. Perhaps the recent pandemic has accelerated that change. We should embrace that change, and that this could be an exciting journey. And I totally agree with you. I think, again, inside of what we've been experiencing in the pandemic, there's been so many different accelerations in so many different market segments. Retail has definitely been one of them that has been rapidly evolving and changing, because they've had to, I think, in just the means to be able to survive. They need to continue to get their product out the door and be able to find ways to still be able to generate revenue, of course, right? Keep their numbers and keep their sales being generated. I find that's even more interesting in the kind of non-electronic based products. So we've been talking about electronic based products, which of course are all fairly hot commodity items for the most part today. I mean, webcam sales, I think, have gone through the roof. Laptops, computers, video game systems, that sort of thing. But when you get into more conventional things like clothing, which we've always had, it's a necessity. But those brands that just build shirts or pants or general clothing, I think have had some interesting challenges to be able to have people engage with them. Or food brands, we're seeing at home shopping. We're seeing Amazon, of course, pushing heavily into being able to deliver groceries, and with their acquisitions with different food companies around the world. But also with all kinds of different items that are coming in. And I find the clothing industry is also another really interesting one, as you were mentioning with your background in fashion. It would be great to hear some of the experiences that you've had with fashion over the past little while.
Yeah, fashion's a really interesting subject, I think, because especially during this, I think we've all reflected and sort of reviewed our wardrobes and probably gone, we've got so many clothes. We've probably bought too many clothes. We've bought too many clothes that we've not worn. I think, the rise of kind of what I'd call fast fashion it was so exciting to be part of. Topshop, for example, Top Man. We were opening stores. We were changing windows on a regular basis because it was about newness all the time. The new item, and I think that's continued with a lot of e-com businesses. We have Misguided here in the UK, which has gone on phenomenal growth. A lot of Manchester-based companies, PYT and all those, which are e-com based businesses based on fast fashion. What that probably opens up is a sort of sustainability piece, which I think that in terms of retail now, people are looking to, it's a sort of considered, we've gone back to considered purchase. So in store, and I think in a lot of where we're looking, it's about that hero product. So what's the benefits of it? How is it being purchased? And how has it been manufactured? How has it been, is it made from sort of, has it got a story behind it? And it's gone back to kind of, I think a lot of it is storytelling behind the product, really. So, how is it being made? Has it been made from recycled? Lots of things being made from recycled bottles. Mm-hmm. And in terms of how brands communicate that, it's around that story. We've gone back to real storytelling, I think, in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting from the storytelling perspective. Andrew was just saying that he has a friend that made an app that uses image recognition to help buy fashion directly from the runway, together with the NYC Fashion Week. But the story aspect of it always kind of pulls through and pulls the brands through. And I've been saying this kind of show after show as well. My belief is that it's all about consistency in the brand and the way that the brands carry themselves. The one thing that I've noticed inside of all the bigger brands is that there's always consistent messaging and there's always a consistent story in the way that they work. it's interesting to see how some of those more legacy brands, I guess, if you will, using the term legacy brand, how they've been adapting and changing the ways that they reach out to their customers, the ways that they're also looking at more sustainable options. You know, I see that there was maybe, I don't remember if it was a year or two ago. Time right now is just a complete blur. But there was that huge run on creating sustainable products. You know, everybody was trying to build sustainable products out of anything and everything recyclable. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a kind of that curve kind of fall off and level out a little bit. I know from my engagements recently, I've been noticing a lot of change and evolutions on the digital side, seeing, you know, non-conventional stores actually break out and build applications to show their brand. I've got an interesting, actually, little exercise for you just for fun. If you were a brand new brand coming out on the market today, what would be your immediate approach to be able to build customer engagement quickly?
Community-led. We have an amazing example here in the UK with Gymshark. But it's got to be built from community upwards rather than so it's about starting with building that base of fans, I would call them. So because they're going to be your customers. I think it's different. What the old-fashioned way was to kind of create a load of products and then try and sell them. It's now creating it's a lifestyle, it's a brand, it's something for people to really buy into. So they need to feel passionate about what you stand for, your values, it's all of that piece, I think. So it's really about creating that sense of community, I think, at the beginning. And I've kind of been like, I think, you know, I've worked at brands that have had that. Jack Wills especially was a sort of real, you bought into, as a customer, you bought into that lifestyle, I suppose. You wanted to be part of the Jack Wills brand, so you bought into it, and it probably lost its way a little bit at the end, because the problem is, as soon as you buy into it, your younger brother and sister want to buy into it, and they're not as old and not as cool as you, so they start wearing your clothes and your hoodies, and it starts becoming slightly less cool. But
I wish I kept all my clothes from the 80s.
I know. My eldest daughter's sort of going through this sort of 90s stage, and all those sort of brands. But I suppose it's like always, it's fashion, but it's about creating something that people want to be part of. I think for me, like Supreme again is another, like, people want to be part of that brand. They want to wear, like, queue up, they want to engage with it, and that's the difference, I think, and that's how a brand stands out, especially in this really competitive and strange sort of time. You know, Nike was amazing. They changed their sort of "Just Do It" slogan for the sort of pandemic, because they didn't want people to kind of go out and do it. So
I'm just going to have a COVID party.
So it's like how it's taking that and really kind of being intertwined with your consumer, I think, is the way, so that you understand them. So that's kind of where I would go. I'd probably go bottom up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I just wanted to rope back to just the brand engagement. One of my favorite memories when I was a child, we have, Sears. Sears has always been a huge department store here. And I remember as a child, my favorite time, of course, was Christmas, just like every kid. We know that there's presents on the way. But Sears always did this great window display where I'd walk around. I remember, gluing myself up to the window, where they would have that wonderful Christmas scene with the train running along the track. And they always did an outstanding job at, pulling you in, and everybody would always wait I remember people waiting for the window to be revealed in the department store. And even the way that the Sears Christmas books would arrive, it was a great big catalog, specially made for Christmas, with all the toys laid out, and the item numbers and everything. And my mom used to give us a pen or a marker and say, go through the book and circle all the different things that you would be interested in for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was like just an amazing way of being able to, promote all these different brands in a department store setting and be able to push those forward. So seeing, the evolution and the change, Sears unfortunately just didn't really adapt quickly enough to the online e-commerce business trends, as did a lot of other companies that unfortunately failed. But that was one of my fondest memories of a kid, and I'll never ever forget, going up to those window displays and checking them out, and how they would evolve and change over the years. And I find that some of that's actually been taken away a little bit now that we've gone so heavy on the digital side, that we've taken away from that physical element, as you mentioned a little bit earlier. And it's going to be interesting coming up in the years ahead to see how that balance kind of pans out, so that we can get that engagement and that connection.
Yeah, and I think a lot of I suppose what the conversations are and where we're sort of sitting, and things that in my head at the moment are what things have got to be done for a real purpose. I think a lot of people are saying, we'll just put digital screens into the store, or an iPad into the store, and that's our digital. We're really pushing our digital. And I think it's about how you utilize these things that are available. So for example, what's the sort of purpose behind how do you bring that magic back from I got into window displays, I suppose, and visual merchandise because it was there was a magic in it. Like you say, you would open the curtains to those windows on whatever day before Christmas and show off the windows, and there's a real magic behind that. It's an art. There's art, and there's lots of things that go into it. It's very visual. So to kind of pull all of that out and then just put a digital screen in, I think is definitely not. It's not where there's a lot of brands that probably that's not the right strategy for them. But to then go and put, to take some of the things that, like Balenciaga did a fashion show that as you walk down the catwalk, all the water was moved. They were walking through a river of water, and as the models walked down the catwalk, the water sort of moved with them. So there's incredible pieces of technological art, I would call it, that has a place in retail, in kind of windows and all those kind of things. So there's no reason why you couldn't put a digital fish tank, for example, into the window, or a shark, or a dinosaur. That's the amazing thing, I think, about digital and technology. The ideas are endless, but it's just making sure that the application is right.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to kind of tie back, like Tracy was mentioning that she used to love making shadow boxes. And, Andrew's commented about interconnected IoT devices that gather data, build dynamic content, combining art and technology can be magical. And I think that touches on the next thing I wanted to ask you, was going back to the art and your passion for art. How do you see art playing out inside of the brand and retail spaces? We've had a number of people that have been on the show, that work in the digital art domain. And I've been trying to relay the information kind of gradually over time, which is one of the other reasons why I actually brought you on the show, is that a lot of the digital art parts and aspects, there's so many digital artists out there that create tremendous works, but they don't really get a whole lot of exposure. And I've been seeing a lot of trends happening with brands, where brands are now starting to embrace the artistic sides a lot more, and they're starting to engage a lot more with that artistic presence to bring more people in to engage in the brand. So what are your thoughts on art within the brand experiences itself?
Yeah, there's so much. I think we have a place on Oxford Street and a brand, or I don't know what how it works, but it's called W1 Creates. And what is amazing is they open the whole shop front to to artists or brands. I think more so artists to showcase their work, and I think it's that collaboration piece that is for everything in terms of how art comes to life. It's around, there's so many pieces of digital art that I see. I think I saw a video of just some crazy moving kind of, I don't even know what they were, like just colors that were moving, and it's all on a screen at the moment. But it's about bringing those pieces to life, whether it's through virtual reality in store or through an AR on your phone or projection into a space. But again, it's a reason to visit a place. Primark in Madrid 5 years ago, I think, just flooded the whole atrium with digital panels that everything was moving. And they kind of have a show that moves through this content. It's not major in terms of technology, but as a piece that you go there, and it's a Primark store in it's not a luxury department store. So, but there's if you go to Madrid, it's on your list of things that you should do. So it's kind of doing those things. Everyone, you go to London, you go to Harrods, but it's about having a purpose. I think it goes back to that sort of purpose for going. We're not all going to go out to every shop anymore, but I think there has to be a reason to go to the flagship. And it was the same. We had Topshop. It was the biggest fashion store in the world, so there was a reason to go there because it was the biggest and the best. So there has to be a reason to go somewhere, and I think that's what it is. And it goes back to that sort of surprise and delight piece. That piece of art doesn't have to be there tomorrow. You can have a Damien Hirst exhibition today. Banksy could turn up tomorrow. It's that kind of piece, really. That that's the exciting piece around it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And Louise was mentioning like Selfridges and the AR installation last year. It made a reason to go to the store.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another question actually that I had, which is a lot of these big shopping malls, traditional shopping malls, are struggling like mad to be able to get people through the malls or get people to the malls to be able to shop. And it's always been a more traditional method of being able to go out and, be entertained or be able to go and engage with all these brands in one place. What are your thoughts on the transition of those shopping malls? Like how do you see those shopping malls evolving or even being able to survive?
It's playing with the destination. The shopping mall is a destination, and it's kind of a safe environment. But what it is, it's standing away from. I think where we were talking earlier about this sort of local, community-led high street. It's different. It's a different environment to that. So it's that again. It's I suppose it's that whole thing that underpins. There has to be a reason to go there. It's creating that experience that you can't get in your local high street. It's not acceptable anymore to just have the same shops doing the same job,
doing the same thing, cookie cutters.
There's not of anything that's going to drive you there to go. So they're all doing as interesting things, but they all start having mini golf courses. They have bars and restaurants. They have bowling alleys. But I think it's taking that and blowing it even bigger in terms of. We were having a conversation as a team the other day about how you drive there. So why would you not have a drive through Christmas Grotto, for example? You can't do that in a department store, but you've got the space in a massive out of town shopping center. To drive through a Christmas Grotto this year, you can't. No one wants to sit on, go in a small space and touch and do that. But we still want the magic of Christmas. So, we've all looked at driving movies and driving concerts yeah, so why not have, use that space for, we in the summer we were talking to shopping centres about pop-up beaches in their car parks. They've got the great opportunity of having huge space for doing these kind of bigger interactive activations.
That's kind of the approach I was thinking as well, was turning shopping malls into more of a fully agnostic brand experience, where you could go in there and you can engage with the brands not only in the stores but out of the stores, and making it more of a destination experience, and maybe theming it in different ways. Maybe they're themed to the destination that you're in, but drawing people there as more of an experience. And it would still be related directly towards shopping, but being able to have a whole bunch of like mini activations throughout a shopping mall that might rotate or change during time, so that it's always different. We're playing with the same idea of, in the content world, of being able to generate different experiences and means. For example, when you might be on a ride in a Disney theme park, where you want to ride that ride over and over again because your experience changes every single time you're on there. And I think that whole message also carries through kind of in the retail spaces, where you want to have a consistent underlying message, but you want to be able to change that experience time and time and time again. Carl was mentioning one of the pros. Direct is a superb example of an online retailer that understood the value of a destination store to showcase its latest football or soccer boots.
Yeah, it's an incredible store. It's not. I wouldn't even call it a shop. It's not. It's not a shop. It's a showroom of amazing football, and it's a football boot shop, which is crazy, really. But it's one of those must-visit places, because it makes everything look, a soccer shoe look so sexy.
I think that's one of the tricks, right? Is we want to make everything look sexy.
Well, that's it. You could do anything. It makes you want to go in and really explore what it is and why it looks like that, and ask questions around the key benefits and all those things that you wouldn't get if it was just rows and rows of shoes on a rack, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, I think we're actually starting to lead up to our time. So I just wanted to thank you again so much for being on the show with me today. For those of you who would like to reach out to Tim, please check out his LinkedIn profile, Tim Nash. He shows some amazing content every week. It's actually how I ended up meeting Tim. I met him through LinkedIn, and was really interested on the content that he was sharing and all of these different engagements. So that's how I ended up actually conning him to come onto the show. But Tim, thank you so much. Are there any other ways that people should get in touch with you, or would that be the best ways?
Through LinkedIn's good, and then we can just pick up anything from there, really.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tim, so much for being on the show. Thank you, everyone, again, for your unbelievable support week after week, and for coming in and watching the show. Next week, I'm going to pick things back up, a completely different format for me. I'm going to be doing actually a panel on extended reality and design within extended reality and virtual environments with Tamlin Wright from Silent House Productions, Corey Fitzgerald as well from Silent House, Vincent Steenhoek from Evoke Studios, in the UK. And we're going to be bringing back Berto Mora from All of It Now, who, as some of you know, was the first guest I had on the show. So please come back to us next week and check that out. Tim, thank you once again for being on the show. Do you have anything else you'd like to just say to the viewers?
No, just thanks a lot for having me. It's been good. It's been good to just talk about everything that we've sort of, I feel like we've been sort of squashed into this lockdown UK for the last however long, and it's just an opportunity to sort of talk and let it all out, really.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And that's been the whole point in creating these shows as well, to have these conversations and, maybe talk about some of the things that you haven't been able to discuss or talk about in general. So it's been a lot of fun. It's definitely been a crazy journey for me throughout the months in producing these, as well as working full time. So actually, I want to give a shout out to my employer, Seventh Sense, for being so wonderful and supportive in allowing me to do these week after week and carving out a little bit of time each week to be able to do that. So thanks again, everybody, for viewing. Tim, thank you again for coming with me on the show. And as I say to everybody, stay ahead of the curve.